Hey guys, welcome back. So today we want to show you a brand new product from B&T. It's not quite yet on the US market. The Firearms blog did do a write-up about it, but they did not have one in hand to actually review. They were just posting pictures that they had received from B&T in Switzerland and then kind of commented on the gun based upon the features that they could see in the images and whatever information that B&T had shared with them. So this should be the first video out there talking about this new firearm from B&T. Now we did get these into Copper Custom. Copper is a B&T dealer, and we have been for some time. I'll also admit to the fact that I'm a B&T fanboy, so I don't hide that fact. I'm not a paid shill for B&T, but I love their products. So today's video will be about this gun and this gun, and we did bring out the APC-9 to talk about a little bit of why these new firearms exist when the APC already is out there on the market. But before we get started with today's video, guys, if you enjoy the content that we produce, please take a moment to hit that like, share, and subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and also comment down below. It helps us with the algorithms, and we love reading those comments. And you give us some ideas for videos as well. So anyway, let's get started with today's video and talk about the SPC 9mm carbine from B&T USA. I get asked the question all the time, Mac, how can I get involved in the firearms industry? One of the best ways to get involved in the firearms industry is to go to an accredited college like SDI or the Sonoran Desert Institute. We'd like to thank those guys over at SDI for helping to support us here at the Military Arms Channel. We've known and worked with them for many years. And if you would like to learn more about getting into gunsmithing or just finding a job somewhere in the firearms industry, be it in sales or manufacturing, please check out sdi.edu and learn more about the programs that they offer. This is not a new gun to the channel. You've seen me talk about the APC-9 many times in the past, and it is my favorite 9mm firearm. And, you know, I don't know whether to call them pistols or PCCs or what, because they come in so many different configurations. You can get them with braces. In this case, it's an SBR, so it's 9mm carbine. So this is truly a PCC. The APC-9 is a gun that was developed for military and law enforcement contracts by B&T, and it has won a number of those contracts. As a matter of fact, the U.S. Army purchased a version of this, and it was the first acquisition of an official submachine gun by the U.S. Army in over 50 years. So the APC-9 is a really, really cool gun, extremely well made. It uses a patented hydraulic buffering system. It is just a simple blowback operation. This is an early version of the gun. This is one of the first ones to come into the country. You can tell that because it has a reciprocating charging handle. They've since changed that. They have non-reciprocating charging handles now, and they've relocated that. Now you have the Pro, where you can change out the lower receivers, so you can use different magazines. You can use the B&T mags, you can use Glock mags, or you can use SIG P320 magazines, depending on the lower. Also, it has an AR-15 type fire control group in it. Some AR-15 triggers will work in it, but not all will, because it does have kind of its own little cut going on in there in the trigger system. But this is an extremely well-made gun. Has a metallic upper, polymer lower, side folding stock, and extremely reliable. Has a really nice recoil impulse. You can get them in different flavors. This one has a tri-lug barrel on it. You can also get them with tri-lugs and threads, and so there's a whole bunch of different options out there. B&T is constantly updating the product. So that takes us into the discussion about the gun that this video is about, the SPC, or the Special Purpose Carbine. And let's talk about that, because people are going to say, well, why would B&T bring out the SPC when they already have the APC-9 on the market? And most people would agree it's one of the best, if not the best, 9mm submachine guns or PCCs out there. Well, let's talk about that, because it's an interesting story. The SPC, or Special Purpose Carbine, why did it come into existence? There was a law enforcement tender in Europe that B&T wanted to apply for. The tender required that the submachine gun being submitted have the same operating controls as an AR-15 M16. That's because that's what the agency currently used, and they wanted to have the same manual of arms for the submachine gun. Now, it's been said that the gun was intended for training purposes, and reading up on it, I don't know that it's strictly for training purposes. One of the requirements was, or why they chose 9mm, was because it could be used safely on their ranges, which were not rated for rifle rounds, but they had also considered the 300 blackout. So 9mm was chosen. That left B&T in kind of a pickle. They didn't have a 9mm submachine gun that had a T-handle charging system, or a magazine forward of the pistol grip and things like that. They had the T-handle charging system in the TP9, but it had the magazine in the pistol grip, which didn't give it AR-like type of manual of arms. So Carl, the owner of B&T, set about to design a 9mm that would meet the requirements of this tender, and the SPC was born. In talking with Carl, I believe it was just a matter of weeks that he designed this gun. So we're going to go over some of the features of the SPC. It's unique. It's different, even though it looks like an AR-15 9mm, it is not. And I think that'll become evident when we start taking the gun apart. So this is the standard carbine version, and you'll see that it has a standard M4 type extension tube on here, but what's going on inside is not a standard AR-15 by any means. But you can put any type of stock that you would want to on this particular receiver extension because it is a standard M4 size, right down to the castle nut holding it in place. Down below, we have a standard B&T lower, and this is the exact same lower you're going to find on the Pro series of APCs that are currently being sold. That means it can use the B&T magazines, the Glock magazines, or the P320 magazines, depending on which lower you pin to the upper receiver on the gun. Up top, it's completely different than the APC9. It still has the patented buffering system in here, but it's completely different than what you would normally see in the APC. And again, we'll talk about that when we field strip it. Has a round bolt, and it has a T-handle charging system. And in this case, the charging handle that's in here, I'll show it to you when we take it apart, is a BCM gunfighter. So it does use standard T-handle charging system. So you can, if you pick one of these up, if they become available, you'll be able to throw in any T-handle that you want, whatever your preferred T-handle is. The controls on this thing are going to be just like the APC9. You're going to have your magazine release here on the right-hand side, and you'll have a magazine release over here as well. You have a bolt stop bolt release right here, and then you also have it present on this side as well, so you have ambi controls. You have the selector lever on both sides, so you have right and left hand to use. So it is a truly ambi gun, especially if you use an ambi charging handle. Moving forward, we have an M-LOK compatible handguard, and this gun is available, and as you'll see, with different stocks. It's available with different barrel lengths, different handguard lengths. It's M-LOK compatible, has a 1913 rail on the top and the bottom. We have a charging handle here that is forward, which would be carried over from other B&T designs. B&T says this is MP5-ish, and so if you like to charge the weapon with a forward charging handle, you can do that. It's non-reciprocating. You can also move the charging handle over to the other side of the gun, but you do have to take the rail off to accomplish that. And then we have a cold hammer forged barrel out on the end here. We have a tri-lug, this thing's a little bit dirty because I've been shooting it, a tri-lug barrel for mounting suppressors. The light that I have on here is a rain from Cloud Defense, and then the pressure switch is back here, and I put it back here so it would clear, the cabling would clear the charging handle should I choose to use that. It did come with backup iron sights, and the guns ship with a Aimpoint T1 Micro on there. B&T and Aimpoint have been friends for a number of years, and you'll find that Aimpoint and B&T kind of go together like bread and butter. All right, so that's the standard configuration. Then they have a PDW configuration. Now there's other configurations. Again, you can change barrel lengths and handguard lengths and stuff like this, but what I wanted to show you were the two primary stock differences and receiver extension tube differences. So this one you'll notice has a shorter receiver tube. This is not a standard M4 receiver tube. Inside, however, is the same buffering system that's in the other gun. This one has the B&T style stock on it, and these are all SBRs. Has a B&T style stock on it. This would be the same stock that the U.S. Army adopted with their APC9 pull on it, and that extends it for use. You have a little button down here that you can depress to collapse the stock, and you'll notice it also has different settings for length of pull, but even with it fully extended, it's still fairly short. Out here, everything's all the same on the PDW version, and it just has a slightly shorter barrel. One thing I noticed about this was, unlike its big brother, you'll notice that the tri-lug is recessed into the handguard. So that may present a problem with some cans that you might be running. In this case, I'm running an Octane 9 with the tri-lug adapter from Silencer Co., which happens to be the proper diameter to fit down inside of the handguard. So everything else is pretty much the same. You can pin on any lower you want to use whatever magazine you want. The forward charging is the same on the PDW. The biggest difference being this stock. So let's talk about how this gun shoots, and let's also take apart the gun and show you how it functions on the inside. Let's take it apart and take a look at the inside. It disassembles much like the APC 9, but internally, obviously, we're going to find some differences. So we're going to make sure the weapon's clear, magazine is out, check the chamber. I'm going to go ahead and take this suppressor off, set that aside. And now we have two pins, both in the front and the rear. To take the rear pin out, this stock has to be in the collapsed position. There's a little U-cut right here, and that's so the pin can travel. So you will not be able to disassemble it with the stock in the extended position. So we'll go ahead and collapse that. And now I'm going to take the tip of a bullet, and I'm going to push on this side of the pin. These pins are always tight on these guns. I'm going to push down, pull on that little captive pin. That pin will not pull out. And now the gun will hinge open just like a B&T APC 9. And now the end cap, if you look inside here, you can see the bolt, and then you can see the buffering system. That's part of this end cap. So when I take the end cap off, there's the buffering system. Now I can take the front pin out as well, and then I can separate the two halves. I'm not going to do that. To take the bolt out, you just pull back on the T-handle, take your bolt out, and this literally is a BCM gunfighter T-handle in there. So again, you can put whatever you want in there. Now the gun is field stripped. If you take a look at the inside, just as I had mentioned, that is a AR-15 type trigger. Now what's different about this versus your standard AR-15, the hammer is down, yet I can still put it on safe. With a standard AR-15 M16, that is not possible. So this is an enhanced safety feature. Bolt, straight blowback, that's the entire mass of the bolt. This makes it look like a submarine, but that keeps the bolt from rotating. That rides in the T-handle slot. Now you do have serrations on the bolt, and this is available through the ejection port, so you can, and they're pretty sharp. You can push that bolt closed if it needs a little bit of help. I prefer that over a forward assist, a traditional forward assist. Now if you take a look at the buffering system, now this is identical on both guns. Even though the other gun has a longer extension tube, there's nothing back there. It has the exact same buffering system that this does. So I'm not going to take the other one apart. Here we have a QD mount for a sling. If I can get the button depressed. So you have a QD mount right there. They also have QD mounts on the handguards, which I'll show you here in a bit. So here's your buffering system. There is a screw right here, and you'll see this little trough cut in here. That screw is what holds this assembly together. I would not recommend taking it apart. So there's your recoil buffer, but once you get down to a certain point right there, it gets even more difficult to push, and that's that buffering system. So as the bolt comes towards the end of its travel, the tension increases, and so that's that buffering system that's going to mitigate that recoil impulse. That's something that you're not going to find in a standard 9mm PCC. Again, this isn't a patented feature, but it is also quite different than the mechanism that is in the APC 9. Putting it back together is just simply reversing the process. Now keep in mind, guys, as I mentioned, you can pin any of the Pro lowers to this. So if I wanted to run a P320 magazine out of it, or if I wanted to run Glock mags, I just unpin this, pick up another lower, a spare lower, pin it on, and I can run those 320 mags or the Glock mags. All right, take the T-handle, put it in. So this is very familiar to those of you that are used to the AR-15 M16. Set that in, take the bolt, drop that in. And this is kind of like the Maxim 300 Blackout gun that we recently did a video on, how the buffer system and stuff kind of goes together as you assemble the gun. It's not your traditional buffering system like on an AR-15. So when you set this in there, you line it up, Drop the buffering system in, it lines up, it goes forward into the receiver, connects with the bolt itself, like that. Hinge this closed and push that pin across. And again, these pins are super tight. And once that pin is across, quick function check, and the gun's back together. So the SPC, how does it stack up against the APC-9, kind of the flagship of B&T's 9mm submachine gun lineup? Well, it stacks up nicely. The recoil impulse is very similar, even though it's a dissimilar mechanism. It has the hydraulic buffering system, but again, it's quite a bit different than the original APC-9's design. So the recoil impulse is awesome. The reliability is there. It's a B&T. The shootability, you know, it's just like any other B&T because you have the same ergonomics here. You know, with the Pro Series, you can swap out your grips. You can swap out the lowers for different magazines. The grip has a little storage compartment in here. On the SPC, we have the ability to replace the ejector. So that would be a wear point, and that's something that you can service yourself. The forward charging system, it's neat. I don't think it's necessary. If it's just something that you want, I mean, it's there, but it can also be ignored. Now, I have not removed it from the gun because it requires removing the handguard, but I suspect you might be able to just leave it off when you reassemble it if you just don't want it on there, but it doesn't reciprocate, doesn't get in the way of anything. You'll notice here on the top of the Picatinny rail, there's a little bead. That's the detent that locks it in the forward position so it doesn't reciprocate. So, yeah, just overall the quality, typical B&T, typical Swiss quality, extremely high. Shootability, awesome. Suppressibility, good. I mean, everything about it is just great. It's going to be probably something that would appeal more to those of you who like the AR-15 and want to stick with those familiar ergonomics. That's the whole reason the gun was developed. And I'm not sure when these might appear on the US market, so we'll have to wait and see and what that price point would be. But I'm going to go ahead and guess it's going to be right around the APC-9, which is a couple $1,000s. All right, guys, if you enjoy content like this, please consider becoming part of our Patreon family. There's a link in the video description down below. Click that link and you can get early access to videos like this one. You have direct access to me. I answer all private communications, and we've built a great online community. Again, the link is in the video description below. Also, right here on YouTube, got that little join button underneath the video player you're watching right now. Click that join button and consider supporting us here on YouTube. And last but not least, guys, please swing by and check out coppercustom.com. Thank you for 13 years of support, and we'll talk to you guys soon.